Okay, I don't know who need to hear this, but I know this word is for somebody. God said you are not fasting like he asked you to. And when I say that you are not fasting, what I really mean is that you are fasting physically. You're just not doing the type of fast that God called you to do. Many Christians have argued back and forth time and time again how to fast, what type of fast, are we fasting correctly? And then you have some Christians that really think they are fasting correctly, and then they crowd to God when their prayers don't get answered, blaming God on their lack of understanding of what a true fast is. Blaming God for their lack of understanding of what a true fast is. Now, I'm about to give you the answer of what a true fast is that is pleasing to God and will accelerate your life. Now, if you grab hold to this information, your life will never be the same. God gave me this revelation, y'all, and I have never heard anybody break down fasting the way the Lord broke down the true definition of fasting to me, and it blew my mind. Now, before I get into the revelation, I got to this message before even planned because I knew God was calling me to talk about fasting, but I didn't know I would have to talk about it this quickly because a young lady on one of my videos, she commented about fasting. The way that she defined fasting isn't the way that is pleasing to God. And she isn't the only one that has a false revelation of fasting or false definition of fasting. Many people do, and I used to have a false revelation of fasting even after Christ, because the world say fasting is one thing, the total opposite of what God says. Okay, so we're about to shut down a lot of confusion when it comes to fasting. We're going to go to the famous Isaiah 58. And I know that's a point of reference for many people who talk about fasting, but that is not where we're about to end. We're just beginning there, okay? And it reads, shout it aloud, do not hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet, declare to my people their rebellion, and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? So here we see that these people were doing fasting the wrong way. It was not acceptable to the Lord. Really, they were just starving themselves like most Christians do today when they're fasting. And why was that? Because of their heart posture. It was wrong. It was evil. It was wicked, and it was selfishness. They fasted out of their own evil, wicked desires and got mad at God when he didn't accept their foolishness. They did what pleased themselves and rejected what pleased the Lord. So they rejected the Lord, and then they threw the word fast on it like it was some paint or something, and they gave it to God and thought that he was going to accept it. If you reject God, he has to reject you because he is good. He cannot accept wickedness. He cannot accept things that are not pleasing to him. He has to reject it. He rejects evil. He rejects unclean things. Doesn't matter what you throw on top of it. If it's unclean, it's unclean. So first and foremost, they were disobedient. They were rebellious. They were not serving the people. They were actually exploiting the people. And that's the entire purpose of a believer, of a Christian, is to serve the people. They were doing the opposite and asking God to bless it. It says, they seem eager to know my ways, meaning it was all outwardly. It was all for show, counterfeit. They look like they serve God, like the Pharisees. The Pharisees were clean on the outside, but brittle and dry inside. They had no love for the Lord. It was all mouth work. It was all to look high and mighty. And so they were trying to fool God. But the entire time they just fooling themselves. Because God cannot get fooled. He sees the heart. And first off, they're crying out that they're humble. We know if you have a little bit of wisdom, if you have a little bit of wisdom, you know that the most of the times, people that cry out and say, oh, I'm humble, I'm this, I'm that. Most of the times, 9 out of 10 of the times, they're the total opposite. If somebody tell you they humble and they don't have no pride in them, the devil is a lie. Those are the people that have the most pride in them because they are blinded to the fact that they are wicked and they haven't allowed and went through the process of the purification of God because they already think they're humble. How are you humble without God? Okay, so now we know that while you're fasting, first and foremost, you have to be obedient to God. You cannot rebel against God and think that He is going to answer your prayers just because you're starving yourself. That is why God says that obedience is better than sacrifice. Because we see here that these people were sacrificing. They put down their plate. They were sacrificing. But it's many people that sacrifice. It's many people that fast and don't know the Lord. That's just merely sacrifice. God wants us to be obedient first. Not saying that you don't have to sacrifice. God will lead you to sacrifice. But if you're sacrificing outside of the will of God, then you're doing it in vain. Then you're fasting in vain. Then you're praying in vain. Whatever you're doing it in vain. Secondly, when you're fasting, you do not supposed to do what is pleasing to you. You're supposed to do what is pleasing to God. And most of the time is the opposite of what you want to do. So if you want to do something, just do the opposite while you're fasting, definitely. That's actually as a Christian, though. Now let's read the correct way to fast. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and He will say, here I am. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourself in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in the sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going on your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. For the Lord has spoken. Now I have ran out of time, but follow me and comment for part 2, because this right here is going to set so many people free. The people of God have been fasting the wrong way for so long, and God is done with it.